Ms. Stansbury of New Mexico for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. Thank you so much to all of our witnesses for being here today. This topic, critical minerals, is actually something that is near and dear to my heart and something that I've worked on across my career. And I always find these kind of technical hearings in this political context interesting because I'm a science professional and I've worked on natural resources for much of my career, including on this topic. In fact, during the Obama administration, I was the OMB examiner for the USGS, which does the critical minerals assessment, and I worked on the Obama administration's critical minerals strategy, which is the precursor to the Biden strategy. So I have a very strong understanding of what you all are trying to accomplish. I also was the minerals lead in the Senate Energy Committee, where I was the staffer who wrote and negotiated bipartisan critical minerals legislation with Dr. Felgus when he was the minerals lead for the House Natural Resources Committee. So we welcome you back to this body on the other side of the dais. But I think it's important, to talk a little bit more about the science, the global aspects of why sourcing is so difficult right now and what the implications and solutions are. But I do want to just take a couple of moments to say, for me, this is not only a personal issue because of my professional background, but because I represent frontline communities. So the congressional district that I represent is New Mexico's 1st congressional district. It's a vast rural district in central New Mexico. It includes a lot of BLM land, and it includes a lot of tribal land. And when we talk about mining, permitting reform, and all of these things, I think that sometimes it's hard for folks who don't represent frontline communities to understand the history and legacy of mining in the United States and why there is a community-based NEPA process to ensure that we are not doing mining activities that ultimately will harm our frontline communities and the environment. So for example, in New Mexico, in western New Mexico, at the height of the Cold War, we were mining vast quantities of uranium, and the legacy of that is that our tribal and our Chicano communities in those areas are living from the multi-generational impacts of the pollution that came from that uranium mining. The other aspect is it takes a long time to permit these mines, and not just for financial and investment reasons and planning reasons, but because some places just aren't suitable for mining. There are places, for example, in Alaska that have large deposits of critical minerals, but the reason we don't want to mine them is because they're the headwaters of the largest salmon fisheries in the Pacific Ocean. So there's a reason why we don't want to mine there, because we don't want to cause the collapse of a major ecosystem, including in Minnesota, where the Department of Interior chose not to because it was the headwaters of the boundary waters. So it's not really a streamlining problem, though certainly we all want to see red tape cut in our bureaucracy. Sometimes we don't want to mine in places because it'll hurt our communities and hurt the environment, and we value that. It's also important to recognize that, and I think Ms. Najib-Locke, you said this yourself, this was years in the making. In fact, the U.S. was the largest exporter of critical minerals up until the 1990s when international markets shifted. And that was actually a global market phenomenon. It had to do with the international value of these minerals and the fact that other countries were outcompeting the United States, and so domestic mines shut down. You can't just flip a switch and turn domestic mining back on. So we can do responsible sourcing in the United States in places that are suitable, that are not in frontline communities. And that is exactly what the Department of Interior is proposing to do and the Biden administration is proposing to do. I also find it deeply problematic that we hear these political arguments over and over again about certain mines in certain places in the world where there's substandard labor and environmental practices. Yes, absolutely. And the United States has a fundamental responsibility in the international community to address and push for international standards in labor and the environment. However, critical minerals are not just one mineral. We're talking about dozens of different minerals. And for anyone that understands anything about geology, you can't just open a mine in the United States and mine every single critical mineral. We're going to have to source these minerals from all over the planet because that's where the geology is, folks. So you got to follow the science here. But what I really enjoyed in your guys' testimony this afternoon is the solutions that you brought to the table. And I know, Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time for myself, but I wonder if we could just take a couple of minutes here and go back to some of the solutions that were put on the table here. We're talking about for DOD, stockpiling, investments, acquisition. For DOE, they're talking about diversifying and expanding the supply chain, developing new materials so we don't have to use these materials that we're having trouble sourcing, designing new and efficient ways of manufacturing, reusing and recycling, developing and pushing for better labor and environmental standards. And I think in the context of the places where we do identify appropriate mining activities in the United States, ensuring that we do consultation with our communities, that we ensure that those frontline communities are not left at risk or that we are violating cultural resources or historic places, and that we're not citing them in environmentally sensitive places.
Gentlelady has 30 more seconds because we went over about 1:20, so 30 more seconds. Go ahead.
So, you know, I would love, Mr. Chairman, if we could just hear from our panel of witnesses, rapid fire, maybe 10 seconds each. What do you think is the most impactful thing that Congress can do to help support this strategy and help get the United States in a place where we're in a good position on critical minerals? We'll start with Dr. Felgus and go down as quick as you can.
I would say reform the Mining Law of 1872 and create a funding source to address abandoned hard rock mines.
Provide more support and resourcing for innovation, and in particular, our development of brownfield sites, unconventional resources, tailings. There's a lot of minerals to be mined out of what's already there. At the same time, remediating sites that need to be remediated. There's a lot there.
Excellent.
Fully supporting the President's budget requests for the National Defense Stockpile as well as the Defense Production Act and IBAS accounts so that we're able to execute our 5-year investment strategy to comprehensively secure mine-to-magnet rare earth supply chains in the United States.
Thank you very much. The gentlelady's time has expired. Chair now recognizes our friend from New York, Mr. Langworthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I have the honor of representing New York's 23rd Congressional District, not only on the Oversight Committee, but also on the House Agriculture Committee. And as a member